The Big Book of Law, Gender Pay Gap. Throughout history, men have been paid more than women. Why is this? Do we have different strengths? Yes, but it isn't that simple. Women and men have differences between them. This becomes really clear when babies are born. Back in the days before baby formula and clever technology, all newborns had to rely completely on their moms for milk to start to grow. This meant that dad's job was to go out hunting to keep mom's strength up so she could feed the baby. But now we have families of all shapes and sizes. One mom and one dad are just one example. But there are lots of others, and the body differences between us don't mean that men and women cannot do the same work. For example, let us look at some modern physical jobs. Who is on their feet the longest? Which job do you think burns the most calories at work? Postal, nursing, farming. And the winner is postal workers. It is not just that a postal worker walks a long, long way, but they also carry a heavy bag of parcels with them. Whew. Next time you get a letter, think about the person who has been carrying it around. So what? Well, the postal service is a great example. Nowadays, many countries across the world are trying to encourage women to become postal workers. But it is only really in the last 5 years that women have started making up more of the workforce. But only an estimated 15% of the walking and delivering workforce are women. Why so few? I mean, think about it. This job is a lot of walking, carrying, thinking and sorting. Women who become moms have to walk their babies for miles sometimes to get them to sleep. They carry all the equipment a modern parent needs and then lift it all in and out of the car and house, etc. So is it that women are not able to do physical, dangerous jobs? Is that it? After all my reading, research and head scratching, it suddenly occurred to me, well, why don't we look at a time when men were not part of the equation? World War II. Some people think that dangerous jobs which require lots of strength can only be carried out by men. This is nonsense. During World War II, when the men were away fighting, the women were rebuilding houses and taking over many of the jobs that, at the time, people thought of as men's work. So why did it not carry on? Why did women not stay on site after the war was finished? Is it our brains? No, that was easy. Most studies around the world have shown that women and men are equally clever. Despite this, it is only in the last 40 or so years that boys have been taught equally. Guess what? When girls were actually taught the same as boys, they flourished and started to work things out for themselves. So, after World War II, why did women not stay in these jobs alongside their male co-workers? Well, we know women are strong and as clever as men, so what could the problem possibly be? Well, it's simple. During World War II, the women picked up the tools and did the jobs. They showed that they could do the same jobs as men. But the people representing workers at the time, mostly if not all men, feared that if women stayed in men's jobs, the men's wages would go down. It was also thought that bringing up children should be a woman's job. So, when the men returned home from fighting, the women were kicked out of these jobs and skills so that they could get back to women's work and be paid less. After this, some people forgot that women could do and had done men's work. In 1954, a news piece was recorded of a woman rebuilding the wall outside her house. At the time, it was so unbelievable that a woman was doing this, that a TV news crew turned up to film her. At the end of the piece, they said, "You had better put the tools down now and get dinner ready for your tired husband. He will be tired." How do you think this made her feel? Did things improve after the war? Well, in 1968, women working in the Ford factory in Dagenham had enough of not getting paid the same as their male co-workers. For every £1 a man got, a woman got just 75p. They were doing tasks that were just as difficult, but not recognised by the male bosses. A small group of them got together and led the co-workers out on strike. They stopped working. This brought the motor industry almost to its knees. They did not realise the important role that women had in making cars. This movement led to a piece of law introduced by Barbara Castle MP called the Equal Pay Act in 1970. Hurrah! So we fixed the problem. Unfortunately not. The Equal Pay Act in 1970 did make a big difference. It made sure companies would think about paying men and women fairly, but it didn't fix all problems. 50 years later, overall, men still earn more than women. This is true across the world. This is called the gender pay gap. Why do we have a gender pay gap? Well, there are lots of different reasons. Women's jobs and men's jobs. There are still more women doing jobs with lower pay, like nursing, and more men doing jobs with higher pay, like computing. Some people will argue that this is all fair and it's the women's fault for making choices that they make in their careers. I mean, what do you think? Some big and small companies feel that if they hire women for big roles with higher pay within the business, they may lose them if they decide to become mums. So a lot of the time, women have felt like they are forced to make a choice, to have a baby or to have a career. Who looks after the children? It takes a lot of time and effort to look after children, and it can be really difficult to juggle that whilst also doing a job. So lots of families with two parents decide that one parent will look after the children and the other parent will earn the money. In pretty much all countries, the parent who stops work or works for fewer hours for less pay is usually a woman. Unpaid work. There is also a lot of other hard work which adults need to do to look after themselves and the people that rely on them. This includes cleaning the house, making meals and looking after elderly relatives. Again, very often, this unpaid work is done by women. All this adds up to the gender pay gap. As you can see, there are lots of reasons why we still have a gender pay gap. If you did a survey where you asked a random man and a random woman on any street in the UK, on average, the woman would be paid 83p for every £1 paid to the man. It is estimated if we don't do anything to change this, it will take about 200 years to close the gender pay gap across the world. To try to speed this up, in 2017, the government in the UK made another law. This law says that companies have to work out what their gender pay gap is and then share it on the internet. If people can see the gap at their workplace, they can ask the company to try and close it. The idea is that once they measure the size of the problem, companies can start to fix it. But there is only so much companies can do. We all have choices to make, too. Let us imagine that both men and women could grow babies. If there was a choice, I wonder what the outcome would be. Would men be willing to make the same tough choices when juggling career and family? Would society change so that people could do both more easily? Making the future fairer. History has shown that change happens when we question the way things are and ask why they can't be different. Here are some questions for you to think about. We pay lower wages for caring jobs like a nurse than we do for scientific jobs like a computer programmer. Why? There are more men running companies and countries than women. Why? Mothers are still more likely to stay home to look after the children than fathers. Why? Remember, never stop asking why. I shall leave this book with this musing. Until we figure out a way to share family and home responsibilities equally, where people can do what is best for them and their family, we will never be truly equal.